Welcome to Neon Kamigawa, a transformed plane where tradition now meets innovation. Spirits and mortals have always shared an intricate bond on this plane. And today we will delve deep into the story of Chishiro, the Shattered Blade, and his precon, Upgrades Unleashed. Chishiro is a legendary Orochi samurai whose journey from tragedy to redemption has made him one of the most fascinating characters in Magic without a bunch of lore. And for the precon we'll explore the lore that we can see, and we'll look at the themes of the cards so that we can flesh out the real lore of this cool character. So, I hope your coffee is warm. Let's dive in for the flavor of one of Magic's most dynamic decks, and then we'll end the video with some strategies and tactics for the precon if you want to learn to play it better. If you want to learn about Chishiro, you first have to learn about the Orochi of Kamigawa. These are snake-like people who used to be aggressive assassins of the forest, protecting it mostly. At that time their physical forms were different. Back then they had humanoid bodies with arms and legs. However, as their connection to the natural world deepened, they began to evolve. Many Orochi abandoned their legs, adopting a serpentine tail instead. A transformation that symbolized their growing harmony with nature, and you could say, while looking at Chishiro, that his bond with nature is very strong, judging by his strong tail. But that's definitely not the entire story. Chishiro used to be a member of the Jukai Order, a group dedicated to the protection of the Jukai Forest. He was then bonded to Kaima, the Fractured Calm, a kami of Forest Fellowship. Together they wielded incredible power, which manifested in a sacred blade that symbolized their unity. However, Chishiro's compassion and willingness to understand his enemies led to his downfall. Betrayed by a moonfolk futurist and a poisoned young boy, Chishiro lost his comrades, his bonded kami, and his blade. Kaima had shattered their bond, leaving Chishiro to wander the land with his broken spirit and a broken blade. The cool thing, Kaima is a playable legend in this pre-constructed deck. We see him as a full spirit. He used to be calm, but now he pretty obviously isn't very calm anymore. His calm is now fractured and has become its own weapon. His anger now goads other creatures that got enchanted by your enchantments. Kaima feeds on their chaos. Each goaded creature strengthens Kaima, turning conflict into an advantage for him. The card's flavor underscores Chishiro's ability to adapt and harness the chaos of battle. Years later, Chishiro became a mercenary haunted by his past, but still driven to protect the innocent. His journey brought him to Far Corner, a small village under threat from the Mukatai Reckoneers, again led by the vengeful Tatsunari Tao Rider. Chishiro trained the villagers to defend themselves, crafting magical disruptors to counter the Mukatai's magic. The mechanics of Chishiro reflect his training sequence, because he keeps strengthening people that have been modified, or in other words, who have auras, counters or equipments on them. And whenever an aura or equipment enters the battlefield, you get an extra 2/2 spirit with menace. This is great because often aura and equipment decks don't have enough creatures, and this will give your deck at least some creatures. It also reflects Chishiro's lingering connection to nature and the kamis of this world. Through strengthening his allies and himself, he's trying to get back with his sword and eventually with his bonded kami. Another type of being, aside from the snakes, that transformed is the ogre. Kosai is a perfect example of this. The ogres of this tribe used to worship Hidetsugu by killing as many people as possible. But Kosai didn't feel for this anymore and wanted to become a farmer to give back something to life. Kosai has stopped having power, and as a 0/5 he's ready to receive enchantments and equipments. In a way it seems sad to arm Kosai to fight, but actually being enchanted and equipped on Kamigawa and in this deck means to be transcended and one with the earth, for the equipments and spirits for the enchantments at the same time. In a way, Kosai finds balance through finding back his spirit to fight. We will move back to the far corner now, where tension was escalating. Chishiro's personal demons resurfaced. The village's shrine, which was home to a kami that drew the villagers into a trance-like reverence for it, was the pulsating heart of the village. Chishiro's mistrust of kami had deepened, yet he couldn't ignore the shrine's influence on the battle. So as the battle escalated, Chishiro found himself torn. The kami's power was a double-edged sword. It could turn the tide of the conflict, yet it came at the cost of the villagers' autonomy. He watched as warriors who had once fought alongside him turned their focus inward, chanting prayers to the shrine rather than rallying to their allies, while some others used the power of the shrine to fight their enemies better. Was this true strength, or was it the kami's manipulation? Chishiro's personal demons clawed at his resolve. The image of a shattered blade flashed in his mind, a relic of a time when trust in the kami led to betrayal. His mistrust had deepened over the years, hardening into a core belief. Power must come from within, not from the whims of unseen spirits. Yet even as he wrestled with these thoughts, Chishiro couldn't deny the shrine's impact. The kami's influence was rallying the villagers, bolstering their defenses against the relentless waves of bandits that threatened their home. Faced with this paradox, Chishiro made a choice. He would not destroy the shrine, nor would he bow to it. Instead, he resolved to channel the villagers' newfound strength into focused action. If the kami's power could inspire hope, Chishiro would guide that hope toward something real and lasting. A unity built on their own resolve, not on the fragile promises of the spirit world. In that moment, Chishiro's broken blade became a symbol not of failure but of transformation. He wielded it as both a weapon and a reminder of his journey, rallying the villagers with his call to arms. "Stand together," he commanded, his voice cutting through the haze of reverence like a blade through fog, not for the kami, but for each other. And so, the battle raged on. With Chishiro at its center, the shrine pulsed with otherworldly light, its kami watching silently as the villagers and their reluctant leader forged a new path, one that balanced the power of the spirit world with the unyielding strength of mortal resolve. In Upgrades Unleashed there is another kami. These are spirits that gain strength from their believers and from the natural world around them. In the case of kami from Chishiro's story, it gains strength from strength. In the case of the kami of celebration, it gets stronger from every cheer and every party. It spreads blessings wherever it goes, which mechanically means that whenever one of his blessed ones attack, you exile the top card and may play it this turn. Then when you play such a card or when you celebrate, you can put a +1 counter on a new creature, which can then start to celebrate their own blessings. You can see how this kami could grow stronger rather quickly, flavorfully because he keeps giving people reasons to celebrate, and mechanically because he keeps giving people +1 counters to make them able to celebrate for him. And then the Concord with the kami is an enchantment that tells us more about the bond between the people and the kami, offering versatile benefits based on the number of modified creatures you control. This works because when people get blessings, they believe in the kami, and when they believe, they strengthen the kami in return. So whether you're drawing cards or gaining life, you're making balance and cooperation prosper between you and the kami. Key tenets of Chishiro's leadership. Upgrades Unleashed is a bit of a weird deck when we're speaking about synergies, because it's built to work around equipments and enchantments, which are two definitely different themes, and then it adds +1 counters as a sort of sub-theme to it. But it does take advantage of Chishiro's abilities really well with the modification theme as a whole, because key cards like Aki Battle Squad and Kami of Celebration will reward you for attacking with modified creatures, while spells like Unquenchable Fury and Silk Guard provide offensive and defensive boosts while still adding to your modified creatures. The Aki from Aki Battle Squad have gone through a sort of transformation by gaining weapons, where before they mostly used their claws to claw their way through their enemies, now they've joined the rebel armies to attack order in a systematic way. The card is the epitome of their spirit, with the ability to untap all creatures when a modified creature attacks. We're shown how using weapons and armor is a victory lap for the goblins. In this way, no opportunity is wasted. And with Unquenchable Fury, we see a woman possessed by Kami, so it seems, because the masks are floating around her. Though they could also be demons. In one way, she's enchanted to deal immediate damage to the defending player for every card in their hand, almost as if she's scorning their knowledge. The Fury is unquenchable because it returns to your hand after the creature dies, showing us how the Kami or the demon of Fury will stay around even after another person or being dies, almost as if the masks we see are from the previous Angered that the Kami have influenced. The Upgrades Unleashed deck revolves around three main mechanics that encapsulate Chishiro's story and philosophy. First and most prevalently, modification. This is the heart of the deck. By using equipments, auras and counters, you will trigger Chishiro's abilities and you will grow your crew to hopefully help Chishiro return to his former complete self. You'll want cards that function as creatures and equipments like Halvar, God of Battle, and you'll want great ways like Smoke Spirit's Aid to have returning auras so that they'll enter the battlefield often to create many spirit tokens. The second theme is combat control, because while using equipments and auras is great, they'll often force you to win the game through combat. So you will have to have ways to focus on getting through the damage. Chishiro's spirits have menace, which is one step, but you'll want other ways to win through combat. Chishiro is a true tactician and you'll want to join him for that role. Think about Invigorating Hot Springs to grant your team haste, or Champion of Lamphold to stop your opponents from blocking your creatures. Chishiro's ability to place +1 counters on modified creatures does reflect his character arc for the third theme, resilience and growth, because overcoming setbacks and growing stronger is very flavorful to him. But you want more ways to stay in the game. Cards like Unquenchable Fury capture this theme, ensuring that your board state remains robust even after setbacks. With Collision of Realms you can even reset your hand to keep coming back in the game. Because all of your creatures will be shuffled, but your equipments and sticky auras will stay around. Also, having one creature battle it out with other singular creatures will be great for you, because you have Voltron potential. In flavor, Collision shows us how the people of Kamigawa live in constant fear from when their world might overlap with the spirit world, because the spirits can be fickle, and this card will be too. Fickle, yet fun. Like any commander deck, Upgrades Unleashed has its strengths and weaknesses. One of the strengths is the explosive potential for board presence. Chishiro generates tokens quickly and buffs them with counters, creating a formidable army just with his own strength out. Add a way to give your creatures haste and you might easily win the game from an empty board creature-wise. Ascendant Acolyte is a perfect example of this because he is a being of explosiveness. With just a few creatures on the battlefield with +1 counters, this creature will enter with just as many counters as you already had. Then those counters will be doubled every turn. So the smallest 1/1 in your army will ascend to become a formidable force to fight for you, and this is a great way to double up counters over and over. A second strength is versatility, because this deck can be played in multiple ways and you can go for counter strategies, equipments or auras as your focus, and you could even make a combination of those, which means you have access to a lot of cards and answers. So make your choices wisely, but do also think about the way you want to play. You could, in a way, make this into a great toolbox deck. And synergy is a great strength, because every card is meant to work together well, at least with Chishiro. This is also a definite weakness, but as a strength, the synergy will be able to enable your creatures to have great potential. Chishiro will leave no one behind, at least not anymore. One weakness is the reliance on Chishiro. Without Chishiro on the board, the deck loses a significant amount of synergy. There will not be many cards that care about all modified creatures yet. So if your deck has a mixture of counters, auras and equipments, you'll suffer from needing your commander out on the battlefield. This is why I would suggest countering this weakness with enough cards that play double duty, like Komaino Battle Armor, which will be a creature on its own or an equipment when you need it to be. Flavorfully, just imagine how these equipments will work, because we haven't actually seen reconfigure cards as their armor forms. Perhaps this dog will magically attach itself to the man behind him, but then isn't that just like a man in armor? Or will he walk around like a dog? Sadly, we don't know. And last weakness, well-timed Wrath of Gods or other board wipes, Cyclonic Rifts, can devastate your carefully built army. You can stop this weakness a bit by adding ways to add multiple creatures, enchantments and equipments to the board at once. Smoke Spirits 8 is one of my favorite ones. These mischievous smoke spirits represent fleeting opportunities and calculated risks. Each enchanted creature deals damage on death and grants you treasure tokens, so you'll at least be left with a way to rebuild your army. That's what you see in the R2, where the treasure coins are turned into new weapons through the cauldron. As you'll be an aggressive mid-game player, you'll need life insurances like these. One with the Kami also lets you return small tokens when one of your large creatures have perished. For the creature that became one with the Kami, its body will leave behind small Kami butterflies to evolve from their spirit into new spirits to help you around. Even better, when other creatures die and your important creature doesn't yet, you'll also get spirit tokens for those creatures. One defensive strategy is to protect just Chishiro and have all other creatures stay unprotected, so you'll be able to rebuild quickly and get these new tokens through cards like these. One with the Kami really shows how Chishiro sees all as one. His unity doesn't mean that everyone should survive, just that nature should. And on the Silk card, we are shown another Orochi shielding himself quickly through Spiritual Silk. Against Shuriken, which must be really fast, so the Silk has been spun even faster. This is funny to think about. This spell will put a counter on X creatures, easily making them modified, and it will then protect auras, equipments and your modified creatures with hexproof, ensuring that the warriors Chishiro has trained to become one with the Kami will stay protected. I have already talked about this one. Having to attack is another weakness, but it's a common weakness for Gru as well. Cards like Rhythm of the Wild will enable you to add counters and will let you choose to give your creatures haste, so that at least you'll be able to quickly attack your opponents. Other than that, you'll need evasion through cards like Overrun, which will give your creatures trample. Playing the Upgrades Unleashed deck, or Gruul decks in general, it's all about momentum. Building up your board state and pressuring opponents with your modified creatures. Here are some key strategies to keep in mind while piloting this deck. For the early game, you will want to set up your engine. In the first few turns you'll be ramping and setting up your pieces. Around this time you could even be pressured by real early game decks. You should focus on setting up for the next few turns, so start with cards like Arcane Signet and Cultivate to make sure you get out for the early ramp. Then after that you will have some cards that will help you ramp even further in this precon. It came with Rampant Rejuvenator and Tanuki Transplanter, two cards that would have you increasingly quickly gain mana. The mechanical Tanuki embodies Kamigawa's fusion of tradition and technology. It generates mana equal to the power of itself or its modified creatures attacking, reflecting the resourcefulness of Kamigawa's inventors. This dog costs you 4 mana and could then grant you 2+ extra mana after that, so that you will have 6, 7 or even more mana on the next turn. That's when you're out in the mid game for this deck. And Rampant Rejuvenator also does nothing yet when it enters, just like a sapling wouldn't. It enters as a 2/2, but would rather quickly grow into a monster in this deck. The real kicker is that when it dies, because then it will fetch you a basic land for every point of power it had. That's the big ramp you'll need in this deck. You can see in the art that the Hydra is in fact ready to drop its sap to fuel the forest to grow stronger. A perfect blend if you're an Orochi Jukai warrior. Other than ramping, you'll try to set up your haste enablers with cheap equipments like Swiftfoot boots or cards like Crashing Drawbridge, so that you'll be ready for big creatures to silently pressure your opponents. And cards like Concord of the Kami will be ready to become your value engines, because in this phase, patience is key. So don't overextend and try to make every move about setting up for the mid game, or if you have to, set up to gain value for the later game. The mid game is where Chishiro really shines. With him on the battlefield, your deck's synergy comes to life. So firstly, you maximize your token production. Don't try to play out all of your resources while Chishiro is out. Instead, focus on leveraging the spirit tokens he provides as a way to pressure your opponents by using a limited amount of creatures. By using cards like Unquenchable Fury on your Spirits tokens, you'll make sure to keep creating offensive threats while not losing any value. Then, utilize your auras and equipments to spread out. Apply your modifiers strategically to spread the power so that every creature contributes to your board state, unless you're absolutely sure your Voltron creature will be safe. This deck is all about going just wide enough, as every aura or equipment will come with the Spirit token. Cards like Basilisk, Collar and Quiet the Spike will give your creatures just enough oomph to be a threat. Make sure to focus your efforts on one opponent at this stage. It's best to focus on the decks that will win out in the late game, as you should be able to fight aggro decks from this point onwards. In the late game, you want to quickly seal the deal. Overrun your opponents. If you find yourself in the late game, your board can still get very dangerous. But think of this like a last effort. So build up your board sneakily so that you can find a moment to overrun your opponents with trample, haste and a big board state. Then, if Chishiro plan C is stopped, you will need a plan D. You'll need other cards to replace him. Cards like Krenko's Tin Street Kingpin and Goldvein Hydra are ways to come back by strengthening your creatures, because Krenko will give you creature tokens just like Chishiro did, and Goldvein will give you mana tokens so that you can come back in the game later. While the precon is already pretty powerful, there's always room to enhance Chishiro's strategy. Here are some upgrades that can elevate this deck to the next level. Like Kodama of the West Tree. Kodama is an expensive upgrade that will give all of your modified creatures trample. It also will help you ramp and therefore will do anything you need for the early, mid and late game. It's also a very flavorful spirit for Chishiro to have all of Kodama on his side. Heroic Intervention goes in almost any deck, but here you'll really need something to protect Chishiro and your other creatures in a pickle. And in Chishiro decks, Doubling Season does double the doubling work. It doubles your spirit tokens and doubles the counters you produce. So here it's definitely a great upgrade. And in this deck you'll love to have your creatures enter with counters on them already. So Railway Brawler will make sure you get massive creatures onto the battlefield immediately, and the Great Henge is also very good in any deck with the creature in it, but here it really shines as it helps creatures enter modified. And any card with haste on it will be great for this deck, but Uncivil Unrest also gives you the opportunity to add a +1 counter if you need it, and if your creatures already had the counters, their damage will be doubled. Great addition on multiple levels here. To conclude this precon lore video with a dash of strategy, I hope you learned from this ultra cruel deck about raw strength, resilience and synergy. You'll modify your creatures, make tokens and eventually you'll be the aggressor. You will make a powerful deck and a dynamic deck at the same time that can adapt to many tables through its flexibility. I think Chishiro is a perfect option for a learning player because even seasoned players will love his high ceiling, while new players will have a focus while also having options. The deck features careful planning, creativity, but also a straightforward endgame plan. So you will have fun with your massive creatures on any level. And remember that Gruul is about smashing faces, but also about the story of embracing nature and evolving your gameplay. So as you strengthen your crew and generate endless spirit tokens, Take a moment to appreciate the flavor of this deck. Unleash Chishiro's fury next time you play, experiment, tweak, and upgrade. Thanks for watching, and leave me a comment if this video did help you have more fun with this deck. Until next time, have a great day. Bye.